was going to be a war as early as 2 or 3 years before the war. And I think when I was at school, of course, there was the cadet force.
Yes.
So I suppose one then was on the register before the war. But then, of course, one wasn't called up at once, at least I wasn't, because it was the phony war.
Yeah.
So there was really no casualties, well, apart from Dunkirk, of course. After that, there was so it was rather static. So I remained at school. I was 16 or 17. Then I had 4 terms at Oxford, and then I got my papers to join up at Winchester.
My brother had already gone in the army, and they wanted me to go with him. So he said, well, going to protect you, those there are your brother. I didn't fancy first log into the army, so I went off to Blackburn. I got fed up with my job. I was bush cycling from Sabden to Accrington every day on an old bush bike. I was fed up with that in all weathers, so I thought I'll join up. I was at 17. Because I got about, every time I come home I said to him, what's that baby's not come yet, Mum? No, I don't want them to either.
I got called up. The trains were coming through Preston, full of Dunkirk volunteers there.
Right.
And I had my medical there. And then I got joined up at Livingston, in Devon.
Oh, right, yes.
I had 6 weeks training.
Uh-huh.
And Alan from there went down to Alien Island, where there was all the people on holiday. Then we sat there one night, back up, you're on your way, up to Scotland. So we went up to Scotland, got on aboard the ship for the Almonds, or they were called.
Uh-huh.
And we were at sea for 3 months, doing nothing else, looking at water. And after that, we went to Egypt.
I can remember when I was just joined up, and I went to lunch with some friends who live near Winchester. And my hostess said, I expect you're longing to have a crack at Jerry. I looked rather horrified. I looked at my friend. I said, not at least as hard as going to have a crack at Jerry.
So that was really why I joined up, to be one of the boys.
The boys at that time, I did what everybody else did, and everybody knew they were going to the war.
Initial training, that was the start of it. And then I think got to Skegness, boat training, back to barracks. Then of course up to a destroyer up in Greenock in Scotland, on a one-class destroyer.
Right.
And I was on that destroyer now for about 5 years.
Well, learning to drill and all that sort of thing. And then how to fire a Bren gun, yes, that I remember was the...
Right, okay.
Because we had, Bren guns. My regiment was a sort of reconnaissance. It had things called white scout cars,
Yeah.
which meant the driver, either the officer or the platoon sergeant, and I think 6 men in a white scout car. So I had to learn, of course, one had to learn how to drive. Luckily I already knew how to drive, so that was, one could swan all over the place.
There was no really training, you picked it up more or less when you got up to shore.
Yeah.
It was different altogether. Although when you was in barracks, everything was classed as being on the ship. Upper deck, lower deck, forecastle, just as though you were on the ship. So when you went on the ship, it did help a lot. It was slang for shore, and the ship was supposed to say lingo. Still got so tougher rum every day.
Yes.
But I didn't tell him it's okay. We used to, we're supposed to drink it there and then, 2 of 1, while the officer of the watch was there. we don't destroy them with slap happy. We've got neaters, you can take it back to your mess, you know, save half and drink half for special occasions, for bartering and that. It was very handy was that. Sometimes I went to shore and get a landlord half a bottle of whiskey to keep us going beer all that when we didn't get ashore.
Yeah.
It was handy for that.
For Egypt for 12 months. And they were making bombs for the landmine bomb.
Oh, right, yes.
And from there we went on to aboard the Dilwara to Cape Town. I was 21 at Cape Town, and then on from there to Durban. And from Durban we come back to Egypt, and we were in Cairo. After that we followed the troops to Ceylon, Colombo, and the people there, they hadn't seen guns at all. The Japanese were coming over, so shelling and bombing. The big battleship was sunk there, and after that it was there for 2 years. I was on the rangefinder on the guns. I was on the rangefinder. Every morning you had to get up and measure the distance from where we were standing to the lighthouse.
Right.
And from there we come back to Trincomalee, and then we got moved again to what is the map we got there? Oh, City of Paris, the boat. We're on the move all the time.
Yeah.
Coming back to the Mediterranean.
And then of course the weather was against us up there, apart from the enemy. There was bombing us day and night. They had we had to go as far north as we could, as you know, Germans and the Norwegian coast.
The Norwegian coast,
straight out to us.
Yeah.
So further north we went, very more awkward, long distance for them to get out to us.
Yeah.
And in the distance they had what they call a flock of wolves, circling the convoy all the time. Out of distance of our guns, radio in the position, I presume, back to Norway, to what it comes straight at us. And there was U-boats, of course. Once they hit a ship, it was in the water for a few minutes, you're gone. You couldn't stop to pick them up anyway. The Turpits was out at sea. The RAF was supposed to be shadowing it, to the cliffs in nowhere somewhere. And the presumed Turpits were out. The Admiralty in London gave orders to scatter. Scatter the convoy were terrible.
Yes.
We left the poor merchant ships to their own devices. I think they sunk about 18 ships. And the Navy come back to scupper floor. They were terrible. Well, the Turkish wasn't out when they found out. They all presumed it was.
Yeah.
Because we were loaded up with SAP, special armour piercing in case we come across it. I imagine the guns they had compared to our little 4-inch guns. Won't have a cat and mouse chance.
No.
But that's what we had to do.
We took Hamburg. Hamburg was open down.
Yeah.
And we took the harbour. Harbour were full of boats, which the officers had taken one at a time back to England.
Right.
And from there the warehouses were full of meat, and the people were starving there.
Yeah.
And we had the big tins of peaches.
Yes.
That's all we fed on them. We did nothing else than eating peaches. And the officers had all the whiskey.
Then I went out in a convoy, of course, out to the middle of the Atlantic, then back again through the Straits of Gibraltar to Alexandria, and then up to Taranto, but we disembarked at Taranto, and then I went up with my regiment. Our first meeting with the Germans was north of Naples,
Right.
or was it? No, just south of Naples, I think. But anyhow, after that it was a sort of struggle up. Germans in full retreat. Of course, I think we missed a trick by waiting at Anzio, rarely for the Americans, because they wanted to take Rome.
Yes.
I think we could have conquered Italy, but because the Italian troops obviously were in
disarray at that point. Yeah.
But anyhow, there we were. It was a very awkward campaign because we wanted to go north. All the rivers went east and west.
Right.
So every river was, of course, blown up by the Germans.
Yeah.
So the Royal Engineers had to put Bailey bridges over everything.
Including starting off with the Arctic convoys,
Yeah.
and back down in the Med, back up the Arctic convoys like that for quite a while till I finally settled in the Med, North African landings, Algiers, Bougie, Pipes, all the ports down the coast, which I'd very near misses, I'll tell you about later. But that's why I joined up really. My mates had gone to
Yeah.
the village. There was only a few of us left. I was glad really.
Yeah.
I got through it and I did my bit.
Yeah.
I couldn't do more. And my poor brother, he wanted me to go with him. He got killed, died just after Dunkirk.
War, as you know, is 99% nothing and 1% intense activity.
Yeah.
And so that's really, I think during the intense activity, my regiment was out saying with not armoured cars but white scout cars.
Yeah.
So really it was to probe the
Yeah.
enemy, see what happened. Very tiresome sometimes.
I hadn't seen my brother for all the war. I'd never seen him. And there he stood in front of a big lorry. All he was interested in was cigarettes. I want cigarettes. I think not my share. But we didn't have to buy them.
Right.
And he come back to England. That was 1946.
And I remember our tanks streaming past one. It's quite frightening to be, so to speak, in one's own fire, because the tanks weren't going. If I didn't nip out of the way, which was sometimes quite difficult to do, it would have been mown down by it. I do remember that.
Yeah.
A rather alarming experience.
One near miss we had, I think was in Bougie or Bonn. We had a bomb right through, a few yards from where I was, loading, through the upper deck, through our ammunition through, out the ship's side, and never exploded. That's right, that.
Yeah.
And just above water level it was. So we went back to Algiers, and there was a fishy government then. We tried to talk him into Burnley. They didn't want to do. Our officer bribed them somehow or other. We found well, there's a big plate on the starboard side of it, back to the coast again. There was a few inches on it. That was exploded. Not the bomb itself, but our ammunition. Same
Yeah.
to the room.
Yeah.
So that was one near miss.
I don't know what river it was, but all these boats kept coming. These canvas boats.
Right.
And all, one night they all had to go across, and they all getting shot up bullet holes in the side of with the car and the boat. And after that, we got on the other side of the bank, which I don't know what they were at Pegasus.
Pegasus Bridge, yeah.
Further up the river.
Right, yeah.
And, was it? We walked up a lane. There was about 100 of us all marching up a lane, and the tower in the town.
Yes.
It was snipers, and one of the corporals had his leg blown off there.
Right.
The last winter of 44, I suppose it was a frightful winter, and the Po, we had, my platoon had, or maybe company it was, crossed the Po, or a tributary of the Po, that's right, which was dry. But then we were fighting, I suppose, engaged in the war. And then we were told to retreat, but we couldn't retreat because by that time it was a sort of lake, and you could hear the bugles sounding right the other side of the. So that was as far as I was concerned. I couldn't get back, so I was captured, and then I went near Mantua, and ultimately taken back to Bavaria. Well, very restrictive, obviously.
Yeah.
I think we weren't badly treated, but we were very, very, very hungry.
Yeah.
I think we were. I think the worst thing was that one became intense on looking at one's neighbour to see whether they had taken more, two slices of bread rather than the one. You know, it's rather undignified.
They had a raid one night, the Germans. The last effort they were to bomb us. I think there was 1,000 casualties that night. Even the water was on fire, and we had to turn the water on the decks. It was, we had some nurses, I think it was. And we had orders. There was a big massive ship was on fire, a merchant ship. We had orders to go and tow it out to sea. In the meantime, the delay to get these nurses on shore, it was just a few yards off the ship when up she went, we'd have gone with her. It tipped our ship up, and there was hatches were open in the harbour, and I fell down, I blown down this hatch, screaming to get me up, being on an angle like that, almost flat. I thought we had been hit, but it was a blast of the water that turned the ship over. Anyway, I scrambled up to the deck, and just got on deck when this massive explosion, this tanker blew up. And I heard years later that it contained mustard gas, in case the Germans used it. So that was more or less the last bit of action I had.
One gradually knew that the war obviously had ended, but I don't think it wasn't only wireless to say we knew that 11 o'clock, so it was it just percolated through, I think.
Right.
It happened to be that I was at the entrance to the camp, and we were General Patton of the US Army.
Yeah.
I think he's called Pearl Handle Pistol.
Yes, yeah.
And I say, but I'm not sure that I really did, I actually saw his pistols.
Right.
But after that, well, there must have been some sort of organisation, because we found ourselves, of course the war had ended, but there was fierce resistance amongst the young Nazis. I think they were called werewolves. And the Air Force, the place where the bombers were coming to collect us, it took us about a week before it was safe enough to walk across the airfield to get in, because of these youngsters who were just out for, well, vengeance, really.
Yeah.
I remember I was saying at lunch that the bomber, which it's a Lancaster, I think it has a sort
Yes.
of thing like that.
Yeah.
I managed to climb up into it, and I remember thinking, oh, marvellous. The first time for 9 months that I had been on my own. After that, I simply can't remember what we did.
Yeah.
I suppose we must have been given some cash,
Uh-huh.
but I can't remember actually being given any. But so when one didn't, I didn't know. Of course, I knew that because my mother was in London. We did know that the V2s, I think they were called.
Right. Yeah.
One did know that it had done quite a lot of damage in all over the south of England, and so I really thought I'm not going to sort of go home and find that isn't a home. So I
Right.
stayed in a hotel, rang up, and I think my mother's old maid answered the telephone. I said, "Here I am," and she said, "Yes, well, our house in London was bombed, but or involved in bombing. It wasn't itself bombed, except windows and so on. So that was all right." And she said, "Your mother is in Kent, and I'll come round tomorrow with some clothes for you, and then I'll tell her you're coming, put you on the train, and go there."
Well, eventually I stuck back into Malta,
Yeah.
put in a camp waiting for transport home.
Right.
The ship didn't come back home with us. I come back on a carrier back to England.
Uh-huh.
And then I say I told you about that next trip into Germany to take
Yeah.
the fleet off them.
Mm.
And that was more or less the end of the war for me.
Right.
And I had to just say, I got back home into Southampton and my foot had took big sore on. I couldn't get my boot on.
Uh-huh.
And I couldn't go to the local doctor, Dr. Laurie in Southampton, and so I don't what I'm going to do with you, I couldn't travel. So he sent me down to Burnley, where
Right.
they had these, what do you call them, invalid type of people.
Yeah.
I was put in there for a few weeks,
All right. Yeah.
and I had to wear a blue uniform. But he couldn't sail his beer down in Morley. But the lads who were passing beer down to me,
Yeah.
oh, it was great, I was there for about a month. And I said, I'm okay now. My foot went right. You cannot go until the commanding officer who was in charge of the hospital at Morley
Yeah.
discharged me. That was okay really. I was getting visitors from the village.
Uh-huh.
Saying, Jim Bates is wounded. Because I had to wear a blue uniform
Yeah.
to stop you getting drink while
Yeah.
in the pubs.
Oh yes,
After the war.
we were given leave, of course,
Yeah.
and then I rejoined my regiment, which by that time was just north of Venice.
Right.
I rejoined my battalion,
Yeah.
where I suppose I must have been there for 6 or 7 months
Uh-huh.
before being demobbed.
Right.
I do remember getting a demobbed suit. I think there was a depot in Olympia in London.
Right.
You
Okay.
had to go demobbed suit and socks, I suppose, underclothes.
Yeah.
I think a hat. I remember I wore my demobbed jacket for quite a long time.
Uh-huh.
Wasn't exactly smart, I don't think. Yeah, well then I went back to Oxford, where
Right.
I'd sort of half done my degree.
Yeah.
This bottom 5-4 is of the Russians. While the game was won every anniversary from 1941 to 45. That's when the convoy was going
Yeah.
from here to Russia. And then the special one, not far as I mentioned Mr. Putin, is this Arkachev medal.
Yeah.
And our government gave us one as well, only 2 years ago, presented with MP in Burnley. Apparently they notified me I would get this medal, but I could have come down to London and collect it. Well, I wasn't going down to London. So having some relatives could come down if they didn't want to go, or an MP. So an MP from Burnley, which is him now, I rung him. He worked down there, of course. He went down and collected it for me and arranged for a reception in Burnley with a press and that to receive this Ukashof medal. And the other ones are general, I think that most of them got them. France and Germany, Atlantic, North Africa. These two is off the Maltese government, but they want convoy I mentioned,
Yes.
taking the oil with. And that's why I appear to have a lot. I'm quite proud of those two.
Yeah.
Because it was a great thing to relieve Malta.
Absolutely.
That day, so it was
Absolutely.
targeted.
Yeah.
Under these two was the convoy until I did it.
Well, the first one was Africa, North Africa, and then from there it's just built up. That one was I got last year from the French.
I think that we've all got, I think, a Victory Medal.
Yeah.
We've all got an Atlantic Medal, I think. We've got
All
we've
more or
got
less
we've
got
got
the same,
we've got
the British.
an Italian medal. You've got the different places we've served.
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing about us three is that we've obviously served in almost every quarter
Yeah.
of between us. We've
Yeah.
pretty well covered the wartime, the war really.
Yes,
wherever
yeah.
we Old Lord Sefton, it was after the war, but he was a fairly formidable man, Lord Sefton. A friend of mine very cheekily said to Lord Sefton, "What do you think about sex?" And he said, "A bloody messy business." And I think that's what one can say about the war.
Yeah.